It's been 10 years since my wedding, and I still remember the sound of that door closing behind him. My father, a man who barely cried at his own mother's funeral, walked out of my wedding in the middle of my vows. No words. No explanation. Just silence, and the echo of that door slamming behind him. Everyone froze. My mom looked at me, mortified. My younger brother whispered, "What the hell just happened?" And I just kept talking, pretending my heart hadn't just cracked in half in front of 100 people. It was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. Instead, it became the day I stopped calling my dad. My father was a soldier before he was a dad. He believed in discipline, in respect, in silence. He wasn't cruel, just rigid. Our house ran like a clock, dinner at 6, lights out at 10, no exceptions. He never raised his voice, but when he looked at you, you froze. That was enough. My mom was softer, a teacher who believed every problem could be solved by talking it through. She tried to balance his coldness with warmth, but it always felt like she was patching a crack that never stopped growing. Then there was my little brother, Luke. The golden boy. Star athlete, charming, funny, everything my dad could brag about. And me? I was the dreamer. The writer. The kid who preferred notebooks to footballs. Dad never said he was disappointed, but every look made it clear enough. When I met Anna, I thought she was the one. She was loud, bright, full of life, everything our house wasn't. She challenged me, made me laugh, made me feel like maybe I could be more than the quiet disappointment Dad saw. But the first time she came over for dinner, I knew it wouldn't go well. She wore ripped jeans, made jokes at the table, called my dad, sir, in a teasing tone. I laughed, but he didn't. After dinner, he pulled me aside. "She's not for you," he said flatly. "You need someone who understands boundaries." I told him boundaries didn't matter when you loved someone. He just looked at me and said, "That's exactly the kind of thing people say before they ruin their lives." That was our first real fight. But it wouldn't be our last. The next few years were a blur of arguments. I'd bring Anna to family gatherings, and Dad would barely speak to her. He'd talk through her. "Does she need a plate?" Like she wasn't even in the room. She tried, God knows she tried, but it was never enough. When I proposed, Mom hugged me tight and said she was happy for me. Dad said nothing. He didn't even look at me. I should have known what that silence meant. But I was too busy trying to build a life that wasn't shadowed by his disapproval. The morning of the wedding, Dad showed up in uniform. Not a suit, his old military uniform. He said it was a sign of respect. Anna's father made a joke about it, and I could tell Dad hated that. Still, everything seemed fine, until the ceremony. When the priest asked if anyone had any reason why these two should not be joined. There was a pause. Long enough that everyone turned to look around. And then Dad stood up. Just stood up, straightened his jacket, and walked out. The door slammed. Gasps. Whispers. My mom's face turned white. And me? I just kept standing there, staring at the space he left behind. That night, he didn't answer any calls. A week later, he sent a one-line text. "Hope you're happy with your choices." I blocked his number that same night. For 10 years, my father and I didn't speak a word to each other. Not on birthdays. Not on Christmas. Not even when my mom begged me to pick up the phone just for a minute. I told her I had nothing to say. And maybe that was true, but the truth was also that I was afraid. Afraid that if I heard his voice again, I'd fall right back into that place where his opinion mattered more than my own. I had built a whole life around proving him wrong, and I wasn't about to let him destroy that. Anna and I built something good together, or at least that's what I thought. We had a small apartment, 2 cats, and dreams that barely fit inside our living room. Every corner of our home was filled with things we had chosen together, things my father never approved of. Loud colors. Messy art. Freedom. But even in all that noise, his silence followed me. Whenever I saw a father and son walking down the street, or when I heard someone say, "My dad helped me with that," I felt this hole in my chest, like something was missing that I didn't know how to name. Anna said I should just let it go. She said I was letting a ghost live rent-free in my head. Maybe she was right. But ghosts don't leave just because you stop believing in them. 8 years after the wedding, Mom got sick. At first, she said it was just exhaustion, but deep down I knew. She'd always been the bridge between us, and bridges wear out when they're walked on too much. When I visited her in the hospital, she was thinner, paler, but her voice was still the same, soft, steady. She asked me if I'd talked to Dad lately. I told her I hadn't, and I didn't plan to. She just sighed and said, "You don't have to forgive him. But don't let hate be the last thing you share with him." That sentence stuck with me. Not because I agreed, but because it sounded like something a person says when they know time's running out. A few months before she passed, Mom called me one evening. Her voice was weaker, almost trembling. She said Dad wanted to talk to me, just once. That he'd been carrying something heavy since the wedding. I said I didn't care. She started crying, quietly, and said, "You think walking away from your father makes you stronger, but you're just becoming him." That one cut deep. Because she was right. In my effort to escape him, I'd started to sound just like him, cold, stubborn, unbending. But I still didn't call him back. When Mom passed, I saw him again for the first time in 10 years. He looked smaller somehow, like the years had chipped away at him piece by piece. The uniform didn't fit the same anymore, but he still wore it. Always the soldier. When he saw me at the church, he gave me a small nod. No words. No emotion. Just that same wall between us. During the eulogy, I talked about her love, her patience, her ability to find peace even in chaos. And when I glanced at Dad, I thought I saw a tear. Maybe I imagined it. Or maybe I just wanted to believe he could still feel something. After the service, he came up to me. His hands shook a little when he said, "She wanted us to talk. I'm ready when you are." I looked him dead in the eye and said, "Now's not the time." Then I walked away. And I swear I heard him whisper, "It never is, with you." 2 weeks after the funeral, a small box arrived at my house. No note, no sender. Inside was a stack of letters, all addressed to me, in my mom's handwriting. She'd written one every year since my wedding. Most of them were short, updates about her health, the garden, my brother's kids. But the last one was different. It said, "Your father never left your wedding because of Anna. He left because he thought he was losing you. He had found something out that morning. Something he never had the courage to tell you himself. I can't say more, but you deserve to know the truth. Talk to him before it's too late." I read that letter over and over. It didn't make sense. What could he have possibly found out? I tried calling him that night, but the number didn't work anymore. He had changed it. Or maybe he just didn't want to be found. A year passed after Mom's funeral. Life went on, at least on the surface. I buried myself in work, tried to fix my marriage, tried to convince myself that grief was just another thing I could outwork. But grief doesn't play fair. It sneaks up on you in the middle of the night, wearing the face of someone you're not ready to miss yet. One night, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. The voice on the other end was hoarse, hesitant. "It's me," he said. "My father." For a second, I couldn't breathe. 10 years of silence, and suddenly there he was, as if time hadn't passed at all. He said he was in the hospital. Heart problems. Nothing critical, but serious enough to make a man think about the things he ran from. Then he asked, "Would you come?" I said I didn't know. He said, "I'll understand if you don't. I don't want to die without telling you what I should have said that day." And before I could respond, the line went dead. Just like that. It took me 3 days to decide. 3 days of arguing with myself. 3 days of hearing Mom's voice in my head saying, "Don't let hate be the last thing you share with him." When I finally walked into that hospital room, I almost turned back out. He looked nothing like the man I remembered. No uniform. No sharpness. Just a fragile body hooked up to wires, fighting to stay upright. He looked at me, really looked at me, and whispered, "You came." And I said, "You called." It wasn't forgiveness, but it was something. A start, maybe. He motioned for me to sit down. Then he said, "You remember the morning of your wedding?" I nodded. "There's something I never told you. I found out something that day. About Anna." My stomach dropped. I didn't want to hear it, whatever it was. But I also couldn't stop him. He reached for the drawer beside his bed and pulled out a worn-out envelope. Inside was a printed email, old, faded. It was from Anna's ex-boyfriend, dated 3 days before our wedding. It said, "She told me she's only doing this because she can't tell her father the truth. You're not the problem, man. Her family is." I stared at it, confused. "What is this?" I asked. He said, "That morning, I ran into her father outside the church. I asked him what that meant. He said he didn't know either, but that Anna had been hiding something from you. I didn't want to ruin your day, but I also couldn't stand there and smile knowing there was something you didn't know. So I left. Not because I hated her, but because I couldn't be part of another lie." I didn't know what to say. For years, I'd built this version of him, cruel, judgmental, heartless. And now, sitting there in that sterile room, I realized maybe he'd just been scared too. But then he said something that changed everything again. "There's more." He told me that after Mom's death, Anna had called him. She had found the same email in his things and wanted to explain. Apparently, the truth she couldn't tell her father wasn't about me at all. It was about her pregnancy. She'd been pregnant before our wedding, and she'd lost the baby 2 weeks before the ceremony. She didn't tell me because she thought it would destroy the happiness we were clinging to. She didn't tell him either, afraid he'd think she'd failed before even starting her life as a wife. My father found out that morning. He thought I knew. He thought we were both pretending. When he realized I didn't, he panicked, not out of anger, but out of guilt. He'd spent his life preaching about truth, discipline, control. And suddenly, everything around him felt like a lie. So he walked away. I sat there for a long time, trying to process everything. Then I asked, quietly, "Why didn't you just tell me later?" He smiled weakly. "Because I thought you hated me. And then you proved me right." I didn't know what to say to that. The words just stuck in my throat. He continued, "Son, I never hated you for your choices. I hated myself for not being the kind of father you could talk to. And for the first time since I was a kid," he cried. "Not the kind of cry you can hide, but the kind that shakes your whole body." Something broke inside me too. Years of anger, pride, misunderstanding, all crumbling under the weight of one simple truth. We were both just trying to love each other the only way we knew how, badly. I reached out and held his hand. It felt fragile, paper thin. And I said, "I don't know how to forgive you yet, but I'm here." He nodded, eyes wet, and whispered, "That's enough." For the first time in my life, I believed him. He passed away 6 months later. Quietly. Peacefully. Just like someone who'd finally stopped running. He left behind very little, no grand inheritance, no hidden savings. Just a few books, his old wristwatch, and a small wooden box labeled with my name. Inside was a single letter. The handwriting was shaky, but unmistakably his. "Son. If you're reading this, it means I didn't get another chance to say the things I should have said a long time ago. I've spent my whole life believing that being a good man meant being strong, and that being strong meant never showing fear or regret. But the truth is, I was afraid all the time. Afraid of failing you, of saying the wrong thing, of becoming the kind of father mine was to me. The day I left your wedding, I thought I was protecting you. But all I really did was repeat the same mistake my father made, letting pride speak louder than love. If there's one thing I want you to remember, it's this: strength isn't silence. It's the courage to admit when you've been wrong. I don't expect forgiveness. I just hope you find peace faster than I did. Love. Dad." I read that letter at least 50 times. At first, I was angry that he waited until he was gone to finally say what mattered. Then I was sad, because even in his final words, he was still trying to protect me. And then, finally, I felt something else. Relief. Because for the first time, I realized he did love me. He just didn't know how to show it. After we buried him, I sat in his old pickup truck for almost an hour. It smelled like engine oil and pine, just like when I was a kid riding beside him in silence. I opened the glove compartment and found an old cassette tape. It was labeled, "Luke, Game Day 2004. It was a recording of my brother's high school football game. But halfway through the tape, his voice cut in, barely audible over the noise. This is for my boys, both of them. I know I don't say it enough, but I'm proud. Even when I don't understand you, I'm proud. I cried so hard I couldn't breathe. Because he never said that to me in person. But somehow, hearing it then, through static and time, meant even more. For years, I thought forgiveness meant pretending it never happened. That you could just move on by ignoring the pain. But that's not forgiveness. Forgiveness is remembering, and choosing to let go anyway. I used to wish I could go back to that wedding day, stop him before he left. But now I think, maybe we both needed to break, just to understand what love really costs. Sometimes love isn't warm or gentle. Sometimes it's clumsy, stubborn, and covered in armor. But if you look close enough, you'll see it's still love, just wearing the only shape it knows. It's been 10 years since that hospital conversation. Anna and I separated a few years ago, not out of anger, just distance. We still talk sometimes, mostly about how differently we understand things now. She once told me, "Your dad scared me, but I think he just wanted you to have the kind of truth he never got." And she was right. I've started writing again. Stories about family, about forgiveness, about people who hurt each other and still find a way to love anyway. I don't post them under my real name, just anonymous entries on Reddit, under a small account that barely gets any upvotes. But every time someone comments, "I needed this today," I think of him. Because maybe that's what this is all for, not closure, but connection. Not forgetting, but understanding. Last Christmas, I drove to the old house, the one we grew up in. It's abandoned now, but the porch light still works. I sat on those same steps where he used to clean his boots after work. And for a second, I could almost hear his voice again. That low, steady tone that used to make me freeze as a kid, but now just makes me smile. I whispered into the cold air, "Hey, Dad. I forgive you." And I swear, for the first time in my life, I felt something lift. Like the house itself exhaled after holding its breath for decades. If you're reading this, maybe you've lost someone too. Maybe you're angry at a parent, or a sibling, or someone who broke your heart and never apologized. And maybe you're still waiting for the day they finally say, "I'm sorry." Here's the truth, sometimes that day never comes. Sometimes the apology you need has to come from you. When you decide to stop carrying what they left behind. Forgiveness isn't about fixing the past. It's about not letting it own your future. And love. Love isn't about always getting it right. It's about staying, even when it hurts, long enough to try again. So yeah, my dad walked out on my wedding. But in a strange, broken way. He also walked me back to myself.